And we're live.
Good evening, everyone. This is Executive Committee, April 1st, and can we start with a roll call, please?
Mr. Fisher is absent. Ms. Crimer.
Here.
I have Ms. LaFleur.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how I pronounce that?
Sure.
Okay, and she is
absent.
okay. Ms. Mail
That's me.
and Mr. Michelson.
Here.
All right, thank you. Do we need to excuse
Motion
the two
to-
absences? Okay. Can we have a motion to excuse Mr. Fisher and Ms. LaFleur?
Motion to excuse. Should we do it separately?
Do I not? Or not?
Motion to excuse La Follette.
And Fisher?
And, well, I was gonna do it separately.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Second.
How, I might want to excuse one and not the other, I mean, no.
Oh, sorry. All in favor?
Oh, aye, yeah.
Aye.
And then motion to excuse Fisher.
Second that.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for that. All right, so we need to adopt the agenda. There is one revision I already realized. We need to approve the minutes from February as well. So I'm making a motion to approve the agenda as revised and the minutes. Okay.
I'll second that.
Who was the first? I'm sorry. You? I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
guys, I thought it was me. You
All
said
in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, I do not believe we have anybody registered to speak tonight. So next, we're gonna go ahead and approve the minutes. Let's start with Fed. Does everybody have that from the email that Eric sent out in March?
Just make sure I have eyes on it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So is this the set from February
February 4th.
Fourth.
5th.
February 5th,
February
yep.
5th.
5th, rather?
We had some updates on that.
Mm-hmm.
Since Charlotte doesn't have her hotspot on, give me a second to get online.
We do.
You do? My phone didn't pick, my computer didn't pick it up.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Let's give Mel a chance to look at it.
I trust you guys.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve the February 5th minutes?
Motion approved February 5th minutes.
Second,
I guess I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Vision and purple. All right, and then on to the March minutes, the March 5th, or March 4th, sorry. Any questions, updates,
I think that one was
clarifications?
fine.
Sorry, no?
So I think that one was fine. I did review that one
Yeah, looks fine. Motion approved the March minutes.
and I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, okay. All right, on to the agenda. So we, last meeting, we had asked that Jim put off the code enforcement officer, James, because we were talking about code enforcement and tenants, so please come up to Jim. And I think I've got a couple questions from David who could not make it. Really, it was just a chance to understand what is going on in code enforcement and the issues that you all might have. And ways that we can support that through the legislation.
I don't think there's any legislation that really needs to take place. The council has adopted the International Property Maintenance Code, which gives me the authority to enforce the code. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, questions from you? Okay, he wants to know what tools you have at your disposal when people are living in conditions that are not healthy.
Well, first they have to call me. And the question then becomes, is it unhealthy because of their actions or the actions of someone else? If it's their actions, then there's not a whole lot I can do. If it's, say, a tenant in an apartment building, and we dealt with this where there was a leaking roof or something like that, then I write orders right away, and I bring other agencies in as needed. I've referred tenants to legal aid to put their rent in escrow, because sometimes that's what it takes to get things done. But I enforce the code. So I just can't say I don't like it, so you have to fix it. I have to cite the section of the code saying that what they're doing is wrong, and this is how they have to fix it.
And it's all user reported, or like tenant reported, or resident reported. Is that what I'm hearing?
For the unhealthy conditions,
Sure.
yeah, but we have a section we do self-generated where when we see things, not anyone reporting it, when we deal with it. For instance, the car is blocking sidewalks. Yeah, well, yeah, and police department report stuff. And we have Detective Matthews who also does code enforcement with me, so her and I work together on a lot of these. So.
Okay. I think his other piece was that if you feel that you have all the tools that you need for code enforcement.
Yes. I mean, it'd be nice to have more people, but that's it's a money issue at that point.
Does anybody else have questions?
So I'm trying to remind, like, what inspired this conversation anyway. Like, I guess we kind of want to know, like we mentioned, maybe like quarterly reports. I guess curiously, just what mostly codes are being enforced. What's our biggest problems here in the village?
Well, it's really seasonal.
Yeah.
We're getting close to where we're gonna have to enforce lawns.
Okay.
I just happen to have a quarterly report for you.
Okay. That's the odd thing. We're just kind of like, what are we really?
And the way the system is set up, I don't have access to Jill's.
Okay.
And I called the company and tried to fix that. And they said they can't do it within the software we use. So Jill would have, but my cases are 90%, because I do a lot more than Jill does.
Okay.
Just because she has other duties. For instance, like on Vera, the dead end of Vera with the apartment, there was a problem with garbage.
Yeah.
And so the problem was people not putting their garbage cans back. So I sent letters out there, and I started citing them. And it's cleaned the garbage up. A lot of people didn't like it, but, the other thing I want to bring up is that we have, and Chief Campbell can also attest to that, with residents, we have to be careful sometimes that we're not heavy-handed. And understand that people have financial restraints, and, it may take longer than the 30 days I give them to fix something because of this and that. And so I try to really work with the residents. Now, the out-of-state property owners, that is my biggest problem.
Okay.
By far. Because they just ignore us.
That's the information I think people want.
Yeah.
How are you identifying who's an out-of-state landlord versus?
It's on the Hamilton County Auditor's website.
And so, but versus like a mom and pop that lives locally might have an LLC that's renting out.
Well, the address.
Based on the address?
Yeah. Oh, I have habitual offenders from California, New York, Florida. You would be amazed how many properties are owned by out-of-state. And you send them notice of violation to a PO box in Redford, California, and they ignore you, so you start citing them.
So your out-of-state landlords, that's your biggest challenge?
Yes.
Code enforcement?
Now we're getting to what we want to know. When it gets to the tenant landlord agreements and stuff like that.
I think the other piece that came up in our conversation from last time was about nuisance properties, and in our code, sorry, not our ordinances, it talks about having a list of nuisance properties and getting reports on that. Is that also, like, here are a bunch of code enforcement files, right? But like, are there nuisance properties that you're working with? I would imagine the out-of-state landlords, that's turning into nuisance properties.
We would need a definition of what nuisance is, in my opinion.
Yeah, what is your,
What's in the code? What's in the ordinance?
well, I mean, a nuisance property, when I think of it, it actually is everything you're talking about. What you may be talking about all is the properties that we need to raise and tear down.
Yeah.
Because they're so dilapidated, they're so dangerous that we have to actually cite them, and by the way, it comes in front of this body to put an order on just raise the property.
So I'm referring to our actual ordinances in there. That's where we got the language.
Oh,
So can you help me figure out what nuisance means?
Well, you're talking
That's
about,
our
I think
ordinance.
under that ordinance, it talks about high grass and garbage, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's an escalation of what that nuisance ordinance that I use it for is, the first offense, say, trash. And then I think within 30 days, if there's another offense, it goes from a minor misdemeanor to a 4th-degree misdemeanor, all the way up to a 1st-degree misdemeanor. And I typically use that for apartment buildings. I don't think I've ever used that ordinance for a property owner in Gulf Manor, because I never had to.
There's a lot more authority and a lot more things that Jim can do in the International Property Maintenance Code than just that section of our code. Probably the International Property Maintenance Code covers that as well, but it covers so many other things, and also covers, as he was saying, an escalation of penalty and so on, all the way up to raising the property, although the weapon we use there is in the ORC. That provides us with the ability to tear a property down that's so dilapidated and so bad that it can't be rehabbed really, and it's just dangerous.
And we have 3 of those properties we're working on right now.
So when we talk about in our Gulf Manor ordinances, 55.7.07, the status reports to the village council, I think this is where it came up of like, what are the nuisance properties, right? We don't have an understanding of what that is. And are there reports that we can have to understand what it is? Because people are constantly, we heard in the town halls for the strategic plan, code enforcement. We try to drill down, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? What does that mean, right? And I think it would be helpful because sometimes, and I feel like even Ron, when you first brought this issue to executive committee, you were asking for guidance on, I believe it was a registration for renters, is that correct? You wanted landlords to register, pay a fee, and then it's inviting in tenants to have their homes inspected, is that correct?
Correct,
Which is not current legislation.
correct.
Okay. So we're trying to understand what is it that the ask is of executive committee and how we might support this, or it also sounds like from your perspective, you don't need anything other than maybe more manpower.
Well, if we would have to inspect the property, I see a lot of issues arising from that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a 4th Amendment issue of demanding entry.
I
without a
agree, I
warrant.
don't think that's the appropriate approach. So that's why we're trying to investigate and try to, because we also don't want to, and this is where David's question is coming from around making sure that, people are in healthy environments. There are lots of people who do not have leases, right, and are renting, but if you come in and start doing code enforcement and they risk getting kicked out, they may end up risking being homeless and living on the streets, right? So we're not trying to get into that issue. So that's why we were, as a committee, trying to focus on what is it that we can support and how can we make sure that we are trying to ensure people are living in healthy conditions, because I don't want anyone to live in a place that's not healthy, right? But I also don't want to invite in code enforcement and somebody's risking the streets because we have decided to add in this new legislation that says you have to register and allow people into your home.
What you could do is write a letter to Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority to get their Section 8 inspectors
Yeah, okay.
to do their
But I
job.
do want to be clear, you also cannot target Section 8 housing.
No, we're not targeting, we're just asking them to do what their job is. And that's their job, they inspect Section 8 housing. That's what Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority does.
Okay, because I feel like there was a comment before that we just go after section 8, and I want to be clear, that is not
What, we have to do
Okay.
equal enforcement.
correct. Okay, does anybody else have questions for Jim?
So kind of back to the out-of-state people, when you cite them, are they collectible, or are they ignoring even that too?
Sometimes they pay, sometimes they don't. I have residents of properties that have since moved that I cited, and they just move away, and there was an active capias for them.
So Jim, on our enforcement, our code allows us, or our ordinances, allows us that when there is an issue that's identified at a specific property, the first thing we do is go to the auditor's website and see who that owner of that property is. So any enforcement activity goes specifically to that owner. A lot of people are under the impression that when they report something that, there's garbage in the front yard or, mattresses laying in the driveway, that we will go just take care of that. And we don't have the right to go on private property to do that. So there is a process that Jim uses once he's identified who the owner of that property is. Sometimes it will warrant use of a door hanger, which is a courtesy notice that there's a violation, and they're given an X amount of time to be able to deal with that. That happens a lot with grass abatement in the summertime, because lots of times we'll see something on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. It'll get tagged with the anticipation that the homeowner will take care of it over the weekend. And then by the time we take action, which actually then will cause the property owner money, because we do charge for abatement, lots of times we'll write those orders and then they don't have to be executed because of the property owner is taking care of it, or the resident, depending on whoever got the actual door hanger. Once the door hanger is ignored, you actually post it with a legal notice that we have an intent to cut the grass within 48 hours of the posting. And then that all goes with an invoice that details the work that was done, lists specifically what the costs were that the village incurred to do that particular service, and then we actually send an invoice to that property owner to pay it. If it's not paid in September, one of the pieces of legislation that comes before council is an abatement resolution, where anything that's not paid in that time period then gets added to the property tax of the particular property as a lien.
Yeah.
Assessment.
Yeah. So the frustration with that is our workers and our salary is tied up in doing things that residents should be doing, and it takes a long time to recoup that money, or we just don't recoup it. But we try to take into account that people do have difficult circumstances. They're given plenty of warning to try and rectify something when there is an issue, and hopefully we'll get compliance before we actually have to do any kind of an assessment.
All right, I guess that answers questions that come to mind for me now.
All right.
Jim,
Thanks,
other than
Jim.
abatement, what other things do you use the door hangers for?
Grass is the biggest thing we use door hangers.
And for garbage?
Garbage, I send letters. That's a more official one. I give them like 7 days usually, just because the mail can be so slow, but it's, I feel like I'm building a case to go to court. And a door hanger was, would the wind blow it off? Okay, well, I took a picture of it. Well, okay, if I send them a notice of violation, I feel like my court case is strong. And Mr. Butler and I just had a case last week where I had everything documented, I had copies of emails, letters, everything, and it was pretty cut and dry. So that's why I like to do it.
And you mean garbage, like garbage in the yard, not the garbage cans being left out?
Either one.
Hmm.
With the way the ordinance is written too, is that I only have to send one letter on the violation. So on January 2nd, if you leave your garbage cans out, I send you a letter. I don't have to send you a letter again. I can just start citing. for every offense.
Attorney.
And that's how I got Vera somewhat cleaned up, was I got one letter and then I just started issuing citations.
So in move out garbage, when people are moving out of rental units, tends to be a big issue. I think a month ago, we had one in Lasanaville. Fortunately, it got cleaned up within a day or two. But those are, I think residents get frustrated that we just don't go take that, but legally, we cannot go on property to do that. We have to go through the process.
Yeah, that was a set out, so that wasn't, that person got forcibly moved out. So we really try to work with them and I try to contact the property owner and say like, look, how long do you need? Because we can't have this yard full of this stuff for, 2 weeks.
Any questions?
I have, on my street, so they have a recliner on the porch. And then, about 6 months, 7 months ago, they had mattresses laying up against the house and garbage and raccoons. We did contact them, so like you said, it's a process. So my neighbor and I, we just took action in our own hand, just took the plastic, cover it. I mean, we just had to because it was causing a nuisance. That's an example of a nuisance. We have wet mattresses up against the house. And
So you took care of those? This is
So
something.
my neighbor and I, we worked together. We tried to, interact with the neighbor. He's renting. So he didn't want to interact with us.
So you're an homeowner.
Yeah.
I know this case. I have to send a notice to the owner. And when the owners are.
And she's just moved and she lives in Sycamore Township, so she doesn't, yeah. But it's a recliner, it's a couple of, it's a recliner on the porch now. And it's a chair on the porch, so.
I do know, and
So-
it's not uncommon in college towns, and I'll use South Bend as an example because my daughter went to school there,
Right,
where they have ordinances against indoor furniture on the front porch.
right.
So that would be something that the council would have to address.
Right, so I'll just let them know, yeah. But that's an example of these things. Yeah.
I think those are the types of things that we want to hear, like in reports like that, where like you've been able to explain, we're coming up on summer, so high grass is gonna be the theme of the next few months. But like that type of stuff where it's like, okay, this is weird and it's persistent and like we don't have anything that this falls under, like that's where we're looking for, okay, well then let's get something on the books.
Can you also talk about how to report something, right? Like, so if you had seen this and like, without calling, because my understanding you can use our website to report it.
That's what I
Just what
did.
she does.
I went to the website, yep, I went to the website, but like you said, you guys have a law, and it takes time for you to report that, but it was just like, it's like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it was bad, it's like wet.
Well, there was other things, if I recall, that.
There was other stuff,
Yeah.
so I called Ron P and it's like, okay, can you get out here on this day? And the other neighbor to the house right next door to it, because that's, the smell and everything, is on her house and everything. Then, her boyfriend just got plastic and the neighbor saw him moving, but it's like, okay, we can't. So we just took care of it. I mean, we just took matters in our own hands.
Yeah, I just assumed they did because it's.
Don't they did.
Wow.
I
Thank you.
mean, just for the record, what's important is that you can also submit these anonymously on our website.
Yeah, and I did, yeah, so we did that.
So your neighbors want that. Okay.
But they're not the homeowners either, so they don't own the property, so.
Right.
But I think I have her phone number and I did reach out to her. but
To the homeowner?
right, yeah.
Well, and the other issue we have is if the address on Hamilton County Auditor's website isn't right, I'm dealing with one right now where I'm trying to track the owner down without luck. Because I can't cite the resident who's actually causing the problem. I have to cite the property.
And Rob, is there any recourse for that?
For not having it on the website? not having it
No,
on
like how to actually track that person down? Or like
Well-
if you can't find the person, is there like okay, I've done a public notice, now I can take action?
Well, we can post the property, and that's good notice. So that's probably the next
Oh, I posted already.
post already.
Trying to get the tenant it's a single family
Yeah.
home that's rented.
I'm just saying, posting is good service in most cases, so if you don't know the address of the owner. it's
Well, I
posted.
sent it to him in lieu, I posted it and sent it to the owner, both.
Okay,
It came back,
I understand, but I'm saying the posting is enough.
right.
I agree with you, and I'm philosophically, you do whatever, multiple forms of notice, regular mail, certified mail, post the property, et cetera, if there's difficulty with that. So I agree with you, but in most circumstances, posting is gonna be enough. And once you sent that letter out, it came back, posting the property, which is really the way you get around that issue of a address that's not current, which always should be, but I know it's not.
Now, if I cite, the only address I have is the guy in Louisville, and I know the citation's gonna come back.
Right. Yeah, then, sometimes unfortunately, you're left with other remedies, such as filing a civil suit, which we've done on occasion. If it's very bad, file a civil suit. Again, you have an issue of notice, but oftentimes we can't, with real estate particularly, you can serve by serving the Secretary of State for the state of Ohio. Once they're served, it's as if the owner's served, and you can take action that way.
When are you all determining whether or not a property is worth going after that?
It's a judgment call. It just depends on how bad the poor shape it's in and so on, because it's expensive to file a
Right.
civil suit. So we have to pick our battles. I was working with Chief on some of these properties where there's multiple offenders, and we have a statute in place that allows us to prosecute the owner if that residence has a lot of crime, simplistically, a lot of crime. And we were this close to filing a civil suit, but unfortunately, both those places kind of calmed down, and I had contact with the owner. We talked about it. One of the owners evicted the problem tenant, and the other one was simply a matter of there were juveniles that were in the area and they were constantly causing trouble, and that cleaned up as well. But we were very close to filing a civil suit. But again, you gotta judge whether the money's worth it or not. I think procedurally, we're not going to file civil suits anymore to raise properties. We're going to bring it to council, which is going to be more efficient, it's going to be quicker, and it's going to be less expensive.
Roughly how much is the cost for I know everything's different, but a very standard case?
Civil suit?
Yeah. What would
You want-
cost of that?
You want a ballpark figure?
Ballpark.
You want regular field, or you want high school shoot? It is so difficult to say. I understand what you're asking, but there are suits that on the outset looks like it's going to be very expensive and very long, and they wrap up quickly. And then there are suits that you think are going to be a nightmare or aren't going to be difficult, and they.
Do we know the cheapest one in the past 24 months?
I would say that probably you're looking at a minimum of $5,000.
Thank you.
And that's not exact, but
Yeah.
it's just a figure.
Just so we have an idea of,
Yeah.
Where
And so that's a
the
lot of
starting
money.
point
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot.
That's why we got to pick and choose our battles.
Oh,
And
definitely.
that's civil service.
That's when we're doing civil suit.
Council acting.
Council acting, much less.
And again, just because you win does not make them collectible. It's a whole nother process to get that
Fact.
money.
Although, what I'm usually going for if I file a civil suit is a restraining order.
Oh,
If I can get a restraining order, yeah, sometimes I can ask for attorney's fees, but usually what I'm going for is a restraining order. Typically, what I like to do is get an actual order that I've built in liquidated damages, so that if there's another violation, I go back to court, and the court has already ruled that if there's another violation, it's going to cost the owner $1,000. I don't have to keep relitigating the same issue. And I also try to make it so that it escalates. So if I go back once, and these are extreme cases.
Right, yeah.
I'll grant you. But if I go back once, it's $500. Next time it's $1,000. And also like to build an attorney's fees, and that will shut down a real problem place pretty quick.
and so you said something that reminded me too. citing the owner. So this goes back to some of the Ridge Acre stuff. So how, I mean, this might be for a lawyer too. So in the case of Ridge Acres, there are problems that should fall on the responsibility of the HOA to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And if the resident reports it, the resident gets cited.
Yes.
So what is a potential solution for that?
Well,
Like, how can he cite the HOA?
I can.
Right.
yeah. I
And you
just
can't
don't
change
think-
that retroactively. That's how it already, like, we can't.
It's possible. I have real issues with whether that would be enforceable
Okay,
against the HOA.
right,
I mean, you're better off with the actual owner than
okay,
the HOA. Much better off.
right,
I mean, the owner is always, honestly, in the pecking order, the owner, even above the tenant,
right,
is the one to go after, if they're local, because they're going to pay,
Mhm.
and they're not going to like it, and it's going to be a long-term solution as opposed to something short-term,
Mhm.
where you may cite a tenant, and that tenant does okay, but then all of a sudden another tenant starts doing whatever. You go to the owner, and the owner's going to take care of it.
right.
If it's, again, it's so much easier when it's local than someone out of state.
Yeah, I just hate that they're fined for something they're already paying the HOA fee for.
I get it.
it.
I absolutely get it,
Yeah.
but that's why we should go after the owner, because they're gonna make sure the HOA does what they're supposed to do. Hopefully,
Yeah, that hasn't been happening.
Theoretically.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And because neighbors asked, can I have a clear understanding, are we ticketing people for parking over the sidewalk? Are we doing that throughout the village?
That's
I've heard from neighbors
usually
on
that's just the
Mayflower.
police, and they do that quite a bit.
I can do it too under property maintenance code, I have done it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because that's, from my understanding, there was like a week where we did that.
We didn't ticket, we went,
Did you give
Detective
warnings?
Matthews and I went out and put 36 warnings. No one got cited
Okay.
when we did it, but now people are forgetting and they're starting to do it.
yeah. I can tell you that
Gotcha.
I get a number of those cases in mayor's court, every
But
month.
did you do that throughout the entire village or
Oh,
was it only on
yeah,
certain
we
streets?
drove every street in the village that day.
Wow.
I'm just shocked it's only 36, it's only 36 on Elk Road.
I mean,
Well, we
the
went out,
driveways are just not wide enough for today's cars.
we went out during business hours, so
Okay.
Oh,
Just asking
people
for
at home, yeah.
the questions. Okay, thank you, Jim. I don't have any other questions.
You've been helpful. It's been an informative committee meeting.
Definitely.
did you want those reports quarterly or monthly?
Quarterly would be helpful. Thank you. All right, so the next piece of our agenda, somewhere,
I just need to close it down for a session.
yeah, so the next part, we just wanted to move into executive session, to talk about employment and compensation of a public employee. I believe that is the language I'm supposed to be using, correct?
Yes, so move to enter into executive session for that reason. You need a motion
Motion?
Make a motion to move into an executive session
to consider the employment and compensation of a public employee.
to consider the
Compensation.
compensation of a public employee.
You could just say, just what that guy said.
Yeah,
Second?
we're official.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Great, all in favor?
Alright.
Lovely.
Okay,
So I think for this, we're gonna excuse
needs to be
everybody.
unanimous. Did you vote?
She's not on
I'm
the
not on.
committee,
Oh, well, it needs, oh,
she's just sitting.
you're just here?
Also, are you been allowed to sit in the session then? She's on
No.
council, right? Oh.
Not unless we invite her in, which we
Okay.
don't for this moment.
We're good.
Okay,
You got unanimous, quorum, so you're good.
okay.
So who all do you,
So I think if we could just
I
have
can-
the executive committee and Rob,
just me?
yes,
Okay.
please. And we're gonna ask everyone else to step out,
So
please.
just need to make a roll call there. Ms. Primer,
Yes,
Ms. Nail.
Yep.
Mr. Michelson.
Yes,
And we're ending our stream.
you know, let us know when, we're offline.
We're so secretive.